What if the films that pushed nudity furthest weren't the scandals everyone remembers, but the hidden ones that dared too much and vanished? From 1950s exploitation shorts to 1980s thrillers, these movies shocked with raw, unfiltered scenes of female bodies. Some banned, some censored, all too bold for their time. They didn't just show skin, they challenged taboos in ways that still feel electric. Stick around, these 10 will make you rethink cinema history. And wait for number 1, a film so explicit it was called unsimulated art and banned worldwide. You won't believe it aired at all. Number 10. The Immoral Mr. Tease, 1959. The Immoral Mr. Tease is a landmark 1959 film that literally changed the rules of what could be shown on screen, and it remains one of the most unexpectedly bold steps toward mainstream nudity in American cinema. Directed by Russ Meyer, the film follows the titular Mr. Tease, a mild-mannered door-to-door salesman of medical supplies, played by Bill Tease himself. One day, after a minor accident, Tease begins to experience vivid hallucinations. Everywhere he looks, women are suddenly completely naked. A nurse in his dentist's office, a secretary at work, women sunbathing at the beach, even a woman fishing in a quiet lake, all appear topless or fully nude, going about their everyday routines as if nothing is unusual. What makes the film so striking for 1959 is that there is no plot justification for the nudity, no dream sequence excuse, no artistic metaphor, no moral lesson. The women are simply naked, presented in bright, cheerful color with a playful, almost innocent tone. Meyer's direction is deceptively simple. Static shots, long, lingering takes, quirky narration from Tease himself, and a light jazz score that makes the whole thing feel like a cheeky daydream. There is no sex, no violence, just pure, unabashed female nudity in mundane settings. Behind the scenes, Meyer shot the film on a micro-budget of around $24,000 in Southern California locations, beaches, offices, parks, using non-professional models who were comfortable with nudity. He used a new color process called Vista Color to make the skin tones pop vibrantly. The film has almost no dialogue, which kept costs low and let the visuals do the talking. When it premiered, it was a sensation in grindhouse theaters and drive-ins. Audiences were stunned. Some laughed, some walked out in shock, but word of mouth spread fast. Censors tried to ban it in several states, calling it obscene, but courts ruled it was not pornography. It was artistic expression. This legal victory opened the floodgates for the entire nudie-cutie genre of the early 60s. Critics dismissed it as smut, but it grossed over $1 million, a huge return for the budget, and launched Meyer's career as the king of sexploitation. Today, the Immoral Mr. Tease is recognized as a cultural pivot point, the moment nudity stopped being hidden and became something that could be celebrated or at least tolerated in public. If you're curious about how cinema went from strict Hays Code morality to the sexual revolution, this is the film that quietly cracked the door open. And those beach scenes, they still feel surprisingly cheeky. Number 9. Revenge of the Virgins, 1959. Revenge of the Virgins is a wild, forgotten 1959 exploitation film that blends Western adventure with fantasy and one of the earliest examples of group female nudity in a narrative feature. Directed by Peter Perry Jr. under the pseudonym A.P. Stotesbury, the story follows a group of greedy gold prospectors who trespass on sacred Native American land, only to be hunted by a tribe of fierce, topless women warriors, the virgins of the title, who protect our territory with bows, arrows, and sheer physical presence. The film's boldness lies in its matter-of-fact approach to nudity. The women are shown topless throughout, riding horses, swimming, fighting, and ambushing the intruders, without any coy angles or shadows. For 1959, this was radical. Most films still use strategic drapery or quick cuts. Perry's direction is straightforward and low budget. Real desert locations in California, natural lighting, and non-professional models. Many actual pinup girls who were comfortable being filmed nude. There's no explicit sex, but the nudity is empowering. These women aren't victims or objects, they're avengers, turning the tables on the male invaders in bloody, primal confrontations. The production was chaotic and cheap, shot in buffo color, a bargain color process, with minimal script and improvised fights. The film was marketed as a sex western and played in grindhouses and drive-ins where it drew crowds eager for something new. Censors in conservative states tried to block it, but it slipped through in many places due to its adventure framing. Audiences were shocked and thrilled. Some laughed at the absurdity, others were genuinely unsettled by the reversal of power dynamics. Critics ignored it as exploitation trash, but Revenge of the Virgins quietly influenced later films about powerful women in primitive settings. Think Faster, Pussycat, Kill Kill by Russ Meyer, who was watching. Today, it's a fascinating artifact of pre-sexual revolution cinema. A film that dared to show naked women not as passive decoration, but as active, dangerous forces. If you're interested in how nudity started shifting from taboo to empowerment on screen, this little-known gem is a strange, bold starting point. And those archery ambushes, they still carry a surprising sting. Number 8. Blowup, 1966. Blowup is Michelangelo Antonioni's 1966 art house mystery that shocked audiences with one of the first mainstream full-frontal nudity scenes in British cinema, and it remains a landmark of bold, unapologetic sensuality. David Hemming stars as Thomas, a jaded, successful London fashion photographer living the swinging 60s dream: fast cars, mod fashion, and endless beautiful women. One day, while wandering a park, he takes random photographs and later discovers something disturbing in the enlargements, a possible murder hidden in the grainy images. As he obsessively blows up the photos, reality starts to unravel, leading to a famous, long, and completely uncensored menage a trois sequence with two aspiring models, played by Jane Birkin and Gillian Hills. The nudity is casual, playful, and shocking for its time. The girls strip fully, giggling and wrestling with Thomas on a purple backdrop in his studio, their bodies exposed without shame or strategic cuts. Antonioni's direction is cool and detached, long tracking shots, minimal dialogue, and a hypnotic Herbie Hancock jazz score that underscores the era's hedonism and alienation. The film is shot in real London locations: Merriam Park, Thomas's studio, nightclubs, with a vivid mod aesthetic, bright colors, pop art posters, and a sense of glamorous emptiness. Behind the scenes, Antonioni insisted on realism. The sex scene was unscripted and improvised, with the actresses comfortable with nudity. The film was heavily censored. The UK version trimmed seconds of nudity, and the US release faced an X rating. Audiences were stunned. Some called it pornography, others praised its artistry. It won the Palme d'Or at Cannes, but polarized critics. Blowup influenced countless thrillers, The Conversation, Blowout, and became a cultural touchstone for the sexual revolution. If you want to see nudity that's intellectual, sensual, and revolutionary, this is the one. And that photo enlargement scene still feels like a slow-motion revelation. Number 7. The Devils, 1971. The Devils is Ken Russell's 1971 historical horror drama, one of the most notorious and boldly nude films ever made, infamous for its mass nudity, religious blasphemy, and unrelenting intensity. Oliver Reed stars as Urbain Grandier, a charismatic, libertine priest in 17th century France who attracts jealousy and hatred from powerful figures. Vanessa Redgrave plays Sister Jean, a hunchback nun obsessed with Grandier, who accuses him of witchcraft, claiming he possessed her and the entire convent. What follows is a descent into mass hysteria. The nuns strip naked in ecstatic orgies, simulate sex with crucifixes, writhe in convulsions, and engage in blasphemous rituals, all presented as a feverish, operatic spectacle of corruption and fanaticism. The nudity is overwhelming and deliberate. Dozens of women bear all in chaotic, choreographed scenes of religious ecstasy and depravity. Russell's direction is theatrical and extreme. Flaming sets, distorted lenses, exaggerated makeup, and a Peter Maxwell Davies score that mixes sacred chants with dissonant horror. The film is based on real historical events, the Loudon possessions, and Aldous Huxley's book, but Russell amplifies the sexual and political elements to critique power, repression, and fanaticism. Production was a nightmare. Warner Bros. Demanded cuts, the Vatican protested, and the UK censor demanded 11 minutes removed, including most explicit blasphemy and nudity. The film was released in an X-rated version in the US and banned in several countries. Audiences were shocked. Some fainted, others walked out, but it drew crowds eager for controversy. Critics were divided. Some called it genius, others depraved. The Devils bombed commercially, but gained legendary cult status, influencing everything from The Exorcist to modern religious horror like The Witch and Midsommar. If you're looking for nudity as a weapon of social commentary, this is unmatched. And those convent scenes remain some of the most provocative in film history. Number 6. In the Realm of the Senses, 1976. In the Realm of the Senses, Ai no Korida is Nagisa Oshima's 1976 Japanese erotic masterpiece, one of the most radically explicit and boldly nude films ever made, and still one of the most controversial in mainstream cinema history. Based on the true story of Sada Abe, the film follows the obsessive sexual relationship between Sada, Aiko Matsuda, a former prostitute turned maid, and her employer Kichizo, Tatsuya Fuji, the owner of a Tokyo inn. What begins as a passionate affair quickly escalates into an all-consuming erotic obsession. Days and nights of non-stop, increasingly extreme sexual experimentation that blurs the line between pleasure, pain, and destruction. The film is unflinching in its depiction of nudity and sex, full frontal views of both actors, real, unsimulated intercourse, close-ups of genitals, oral sex, bondage, strangulation during sex, and graphic acts that were unprecedented in non-pornographic cinema. Oshima's direction is intimate and raw. Long, static takes, natural lighting, minimal editing, and a focus on bodies and motion. There is no music in most scenes, letting the sounds of breathing, moaning, and flesh create an almost documentary intensity. The film is shot in real Japanese interiors, tatami rooms, wooden baths, giving it a tactile, lived-in feel. Production was secretive. Oshima shot in Tokyo with a small crew to avoid censorship, and the actors were fully committed to the realism. When the film premiered, it was banned in Japan, still is in its uncut form, rated X worldwide, and seized by customs in multiple countries. Audiences were stunned. Some walked out. Others were mesmerized by its honesty. Critics were divided. Some called it art, others pornography. The film was defended in court as a serious exploration of love, obsession, and the body's limits. In the Realm of the Senses influenced everything from Y tu mamá también to modern erotic cinema. It remains a landmark of body-positive, boundary-pushing filmmaking. If you're looking for nudity that's not just titillating but deeply human and confrontational, this is the ultimate example, and its intensity still feels revolutionary. Number 5. The Night Porter, 1974. The Night Porter, Il Portiere di Notte, is Liliana Cavani's 1974 Italian erotic drama, one of the most psychologically daring and visually bold films about nudity, power, and trauma. Dirk Bogarde plays Max, a former Nazi SS officer now working as a night porter in a Vienna hotel in 1957. Charlotte Rampling is Lucia, a concentration camp survivor and former prisoner who recognizes Max when she checks in with her husband. Instead of exposing him, they resume their sadomasochistic relationship, a twisted, obsessive affair filled with flashbacks to the camp, where Lucia was his favorite. The nudity is intimate, disturbing, and constant. Rampling appears topless and fully nude in multiple scenes, dancing in a Nazi cap for Max, in flashbacks of camp exploitation, and in present-day erotic encounters.
Cavani's direction is cold and elegant, slow pans, shadowy lighting, and a Franco Arcali score that heightens the tension. The film explores how trauma and desire can intertwine, using nudity not for titillation, but to show vulnerability, control, and the lingering scars of the Holocaust. Shot in Vienna and Rome, it uses real locations to ground the surreal psychology. Production was intense. Rampling and Bogard were fully committed to the raw emotional and physical demands. When released, it was rated X in many countries, banned in Italy for obscenity, and protested by Jewish groups for its subject matter. Audiences were polarized. Some saw exploitation, others profound art. Critics were divided, but the film gained cult status over time. It influenced later works like Secretary, The Piano Teacher, and even modern psychological thrillers. If you want nudity that carries emotional and historical weight, The Night Porter is unforgettable, and Rampling's performance remains hauntingly powerful.
Number 4. Body Double, 1984. Body Double is Brian De Palma's 1984 erotic thriller, one of the most visually audacious and sexually explicit mainstream films of the 1980s, and still one of the boldest uses of nudity to drive suspense and voyeurism. Craig Wasson plays Jake Scully, a struggling actor who gets fired from a horror film and ends up house-sitting a luxurious Hollywood Hills home with a telescope. From his balcony, he becomes obsessed with watching his glamorous neighbor, Gloria, Deborah Shelton, perform nightly strip teases and erotic dances, scenes shot with lingering, almost pornographic detail. When he witnesses what looks like her murder, he dives into the porn industry to find clues, encountering Holly Body, Melanie Griffith, a porn actress whose explicit scenes further blur the line between fantasy and reality. The nudity is central and unapologetic. Shelton's full frontal striptease is long, slow, and shot from multiple angles. Griffith's porn sequences are graphic and unflinching. De Palma's direction is pure Hitchcock meets exploitation. Long tracking shots through windows, a pulsating Pino Donaggio score, and a voyeuristic camera that implicates the viewer. The film is shot in real LA locations, the famous Chemisphere House, porn sets, and nightclubs, creating a sleazy, glamorous 80s atmosphere. Production was controversial. De Palma pushed for realism, and the actresses were fully committed to the explicit scenes. The film received an X rating initially, later cut to R, and critics slammed it as misogynistic exploitation. Audiences were divided. Some walked out, others were mesmerized by the tension and sexuality. It underperformed commercially but gained cult status for its meta-commentary on watching and desire. Body Double influenced films like Eyes Wide Shut and modern erotic thrillers. If you want nudity that's glamorous, suspenseful, and self-aware, this is a standout, and that telescope view still feels dangerously intimate. Number 3. Betty Blue, 37 Degrees 2 Le Matin, 1986. Betty Blue, also known as 37 Degrees 2 Le Matin, is Jean-Jacques Benet's 1986 French drama, one of the most unapologetically sensual and nude films of the 1980s, and a cult classic for its raw, passionate portrayal of love and madness. Béatrice Dalle stars as Betty, a wild, impulsive young woman who falls for Zorg, Jean-Hugues Anglade, a quiet handyman and aspiring writer living in a seaside bungalow. Their relationship explodes into an all-consuming affair filled with sex, creativity, and eventual self-destruction. Dalle is naked or nearly naked for much of the film, from the opening scene where she strips and dances freely to countless intimate moments in bed, on the beach, and in everyday life. The nudity is natural, joyful, and unself-conscious. Benet shoots it with warmth and admiration, never exploitative. The film is visually lush, bright Mediterranean colors, sun-drenched beaches, and intimate interiors, with a haunting Gabriel Yared score that amplifies the emotional intensity. Production was intense. Dalle, in her breakout role, was fearless and fully committed. The chemistry with Anglade feels real. The director's cut is 3 hours long and even more explicit.
When released, it was rated X in some countries and censored for nudity. Critics were divided. Some praised the passion, others called it indulgent. Audiences were captivated, and it became a massive hit in France and a cult favorite worldwide. Betty Blue influenced countless romantic dramas and erotic films. If you want nudity that feels alive, emotional, and deeply human, this is unforgettable, and Dao's performance remains electrifying.
Number 2. The Beast, La Bête, 1975. The Beast, La Bête, is Walerian Borowczyk's 1975 French erotic horror art film, one of the most outrageous and visually explicit movies of the decade, and still one of the most notorious for its unrelenting, surreal nudity and bestiality themes. The film is structured as a gothic nightmare. An aristocratic family gathers at a decaying French chateau for an arranged marriage between Lucy, Lisbeth Hummel, and Maturin, Pierre Benedetti. On the wedding night, Lucy begins having vivid erotic dreams or visions of a hairy, monstrous beast ravishing a naked woman in a lush, candlelit bedroom. The nudity is constant, graphic, and dreamlike. Lisbeth Hummel is fully nude in almost every scene, often in slow motion, with lingering close-ups of her body during the beast's attacks. Borowczyk shoots the sex scenes with painterly precision, soft lighting, rich colors, and a Baroque style that makes the explicit acts feel like erotic paintings come to life. The beast itself is a practical puppet, covered in fur with a massive phallus, and the encounters are shown in detail: penetration, orgasm, fluids. It's shocking even by today's standards. The film is based loosely on Borowczyk's earlier short film, but expanded into a full feature with a framing story of family secrets, incestuous undertones, and supernatural decay. Production was secretive, shot in a real French chateau with minimal crew to avoid censorship. When released, it was heavily cut in most countries. The uncut version was banned in the UK for decades, rated X everywhere, and labeled obscene. Audiences were stunned. Some laughed in disbelief, others were horrified. Critics were divided. Some called it art, others pure pornography. The Beast gained underground cult status among fans of transgressive cinema. It influenced later erotic horror like Trouble Every Day and modern body horror. If you want a film where nudity is pushed to surreal, taboo-breaking extremes, this is the one. And its dreamlike intensity still feels dangerously alive. Number 1. The Story of O, Histoire de O, 1975. The Story of O is just Jaeckin's 1975 French erotic drama, one of the most visually lavish and unapologetically nude films of the 1970s, and a landmark in cinematic exploration of submission and desire. Based on Pauline Réage's controversial novel, it follows O, Corinne Cléry, a young fashion photographer who is taken by her lover René, Udo Kier, to a secluded chateau called Roissy. There, she voluntarily submits to a secret society of dominant men and women who train her in complete sexual submission, blindfolded, chained, whipped, and used by multiple partners. The nudity is constant, elegant, and explicit. Corinne Cléry is fully nude in almost every scene, posed in bondage, during group encounters, in slow-motion shots of her body being adorned with leather and chains. Jaeckin's direction is lush and stylized, soft focus, rich candlelit interiors, Baroque sets, and a dreamy Pierre Bachelet score that turns the explicit acts into erotic tableau. The film is shot in real French chateaux and studios, with meticulous attention to costumes, leather corsets, masks, collars, and lighting that makes every scene feel like a high-fashion photo shoot gone perverse. Production was secretive. Jaeckin used softcore techniques to make the film look artistic rather than pornographic, and Cléry was fully committed to the demanding physical scenes. When released, it was rated X in most countries, heavily censored or banned outright, especially the uncut version, and protested by feminist groups for its portrayal of female submission. Audiences were polarized, some were shocked, others mesmerized by its beauty and taboo-breaking honesty.
The story of O became a massive hit in Europe and a cult classic worldwide, influencing everything from 9.5 Weeks to modern BDSM cinema. It's still debated. Is it empowering fantasy or exploitative? Regardless, it remains a bold milestone. If you want nudity that's glamorous, ritualistic, and psychologically layered, this is unforgettable. And Clary's performance still carries a haunting intensity. That's it. 10 hidden films from the 50s to 80s that dared to show too much and paid for it with bans, cuts, and silence. They cross lines most wouldn't touch and still feel electric today. Which one shocked you the most? Drop it in the comments. I read every word. If you want more bold, forgotten cinema, like, subscribe, hit the bell. There's always something darker waiting. Thanks for watching. See you next time.